The holiday shopping season will cap off a dramatic and uncertain year for the retail sector, with over 70% of Americans saying they're going to change their holiday traditions this year because of the coronavirus pandemic. Joining me today to discuss what this means for the retail sector is Alex Fitzgerald. She's principal of the consumer and retail practice at the global consulting firm Kearney. So Alex, I think the big question this year is, how much are people going to spend? So what is the outlook for the retail sector looking like?
Yeah, the outlook is looking uncertain. And really the uncertainty is being driven by a number of different things. First and foremost, consumers' financial situation. So even though jobs are looking better, we're still dealing with 6.8 million higher unemployment than we were seeing in February. So that's a reality that retailers need to adapt to. And then of course there's the uncertainty related to the virus. So what will shopping look like? To what extent will stores be open? What will the capacity be? There's a lot of uncertainty that can impact the demand both up and down that retailers are really trying to plan around in these weeks leading up to the holiday.
Right. And as you mentioned, no doubt going to a store is going to look very different this year. So how is that contributing to how, this pandemic is shaping the holiday season, and what trends are we likely to see come out of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost comical. If you think of Black Friday, the visual is consumers, beating down the doors to get in the store. That just doesn't work. So we will see a lot of e-commerce, but it's not just online purchases, it's also curbside. So we're talking to a lot of, the management teams of our retail clients around how can we make sure that you're set up to do e-commerce, both from a front-end perspective to meet your customer promise timelines, but also to be able to manage some of the nuances like curbside pickup. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Online takes a lot of different forms, and our retailers really need to understand what they need to do and how they need to do that profitably.
We saw some companies kind of moving towards this direction in the first place. I think of Walmart, Amazon, Target. Do you see those three as kind of the big winners emerging in this? How are retailers handling this shift?
Yeah, I think to the extent that some of the big players are really setting the standards in terms of what consumers should expect in terms of timelines and offerings, other smaller retailers are having to grapple with, how do we compete? How do we compete given the cost burden that can add, not only from needing to actually fulfill these orders, but also from managing all of the returns that go hand in hand with e-commerce business.
And I think I saw a figure that more than half of Americans expect to do their shopping through e-commerce. So, how is this returns process going to look like for the consumers and for these businesses, which I'm sure just adds another cost to their bottom line?
Yeah, absolutely. There's really two big cost items that we're talking to our clients about. One is, how do you manage the actual returns processing costs? So how do you need to think about the product that's coming back in and all of the, touches that go into that and the cost that drives. And the other thing that's quite interesting is, who are some of the new entrants, some of the entrepreneurial companies who are entering this space and trying to help the retailers reduce the incidence of returns. So fit technology is something that is often a topic there. And then also, how can the retailers bundle returns together so that they save in some of the cost of actually bringing that back to their distribution centers? Really interesting conversations and really top of mind for our customers because they realize, with e-commerce, so comes returns.
And because of the rise of e-commerce, we've seen major shippers like UPS and FedEx bulking up their staff for the expected surge of packages. But just because there's been more online shopping, does that mean that physical stores should neglect hiring more workers?
So they shouldn't neglect to hire staff. I think it's a question of not how many people they should be hiring as sort of a singular option that maybe we've looked at in years past. And it's more of a question of who do they need in which roles. So the actual roles that store labor is playing within the physical four walls is evolving. So now you have people who are responsible for sanitization, you have queue management, you have in-store fulfillment individuals. So there's a number of different activities that are required within the four walls. And then you still need to deliver a great customer experience because those expectations haven't gone away when we think of what consumers are looking at and looking for from their retailers.
As we move forward from this, are there any long-term shifts that have occurred during this pandemic in how retailers are going to message and retain customers moving forward?
I think there's a couple, and the first one is probably the obvious one, and I think the one that gets a lot of airtime, which is e-commerce. So we've seen an acceleration, and some of that does soften once we have stores open and once there's less health concern. However, consumers are used to this now, so we will see an elevated rate there, and that's something that retailers are thinking through. What is the long-term customer experience need to be, and how do we need to think about customer acquisition in the digital world? I think one that's less discussed, but I think equally as important, is this whole idea around how can retailers really learn to be more adaptive? So we have seen test and learn become sort of the mantra of the tech industry. And retailers, that really wasn't historically in their DNA. But now that we're dealing with this uncertainty, and we can't rely on past performance to understand the capabilities and the resourcing that needs to be in place, what retailers are really trying to understand now is how do we build that muscle to understand the data that's coming in and make really quick decisions around what we need and what we want to offer our customers. So I think we see more agile retailers for the retailers who make it out of this and who emerge with a really great set of capabilities.
Well, Alex, it's very interesting, and thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you.
And for more of our retail coverage, head on over to investors.com. For Investors Business Daily, I'm Alexis Garcia.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching Investors Business Daily on YouTube. If you want to watch more videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.